You mentioned that you make your own hand tools and that you use them in making the guitar. From a guitar player standpoint, why is that better or different?
It's a very good question, and it's a good question because it's kind of a simple answer. When you use hand tools, you have a more physical connection with the making of an instrument. You're allowed to feel things and kind of wood is a very organic material, and to send something through a machine, it's kind of meaningless, and you can't control it. It's up to the machine. You can dial in a number, but when you're doing things by hand, you have the tactile feeling of this creation. And when you do that and you tune something and you work with the plates, and you get things to a finite point before you glue them together, you have complete control over how it's going to sound when it's together. A lot of classical guitar makers that's how they build guitars. They'll get the tops kind of to it's like their canvas. There's no guesswork involved, and in the end, the result is an instrument that's more uniform. There's no sweet spot. A lot of times, if you go to a guitar shop and you'll see 10 guitars on the wall, you can just go along and just hit them, and one will be loud and the others won't. One guitar might sound better, with it just has a sweet spot. Some have a sweet spot in D, some it's E, and I feel that when you do things with hand tools and you have this precision, you can make an instrument that's kind of very, very balanced and sounds good in all registers, and it's just a wonderful instrument. And it's kind of like a cello or a violin. They can't just have an amazing sweet spot. If that's the case, they're going to have a wolf note, and it's going to be problematic. So that's what I want to bring to the guitar, the sense of precision. And I feel like the archtop, in the world of archtops, it's kind of left, it doesn't really exist. There's some people who do it, and everybody does it different, and that's what makes it magical, and it's art.
Well, speaking about art a little bit, it seems that by making guitars by hand and spending all this time with them, it's a little bit sort of in contrast to how we live as a society today. I mean, everyone wants things yesterday, and they want things done the same. I mean, that's why the inside of every McDonald's looks the same. Because if you're in Arkansas or Alabama or New Mexico or China, people want to have that familiarity.
Yeah.
But you're kind of going against that grain, and how do you see yourself fitting in as far as the marketplace, when people have to wait 6 months for one of your guitars or longer because these are made by hand very slowly. I mean, who are you sort of building these guitars for, and do people ever try and get them quicker, or
Sure.
want them to be built all the same because they're used to that in
Sure.
society today?
It's interesting because I've met a lot of people, and I'll have deadlines, and it's important to work with deadlines. It keeps you focused. You're not just you do have to think of it as a business, but the art side of it, I feel like the people that I've worked with, they're very understanding, and they don't want to be pushy because, if you want things to happen as they happen, but it's my responsibility as a business to do things, and get things done when they're needed. So it's kind of a very delicate balance between the business side and the artistic side, and that's maybe the hardest thing about it, but it's a drive, and when you can do it and make people happy, and in the end when somebody gets their instrument, it's an amazing feeling all around. It's an amazing feeling for them, and it's the most gratifying experience for me, listening to somebody play, and it's a different expression for me. My expression comes out in the guitar, and actually it's the same because their expression comes out in the guitar as well, but in a different way.
Well, do you find that because you started off working with violins, which have hundreds and hundreds of years of history of working by hand and laboring over them, and it being an art? I mean, when we think of Stradivarius instruments, we think of very artistic. They're like Picasso paintings or Van Goghs or whatever. Whereas the guitar, since it's kind of newer, we think of them as sort of factory made, and we're all okay with that. I mean, do you think that, you know, you've kind of gone this way with the hand tools and working, you know, like with your hands so much because you started with violins?
I think so. I was a visual artist before. I was always into guitars, but before I got into building, I was always a visual. I did visual arts. But learning the violin and studying these old makers and seeing the instruments in person, it's an amazing experience. And the reason why they did that, it was their time. Like during the 16th century, that was the way they did things. Like math, you know, there was no written instructions on how to make a violin. Like the correct way was to design it using math and things that made sense. And they started from scratch, and that's why those instruments are so valuable, because everything, it's like those instruments could have like come from the ocean. They're so organic, but you know, nature is math, and so there are all these golden relationships that make sense. The guitar, you know, and this has happened in the violin world after that, people copied things and, you know, without understanding these basics, and the guitar kind of, follows that kind of same thing in that it was designed, but it wasn't designed from those kinds of principles. And it was designed to initially be in a factory. So those things didn't really exist, and they're kind of coming around now, and new makers are seeing this, and I think the economy collapsing and people wanting things that are, valuable in an artistic way, and things that have, hard value like art. It's coming very popular again, and people are seeing the quality in that kind of aesthetic more than, something that just has a logo on it that means something.